Hello to all you rad people out there from whatever rad place you're watching it, whatever rad time you might be watching in. This is the Rad Podcast because I'm Ryan.
And I'm David. And ladies and gentlemen, we are thankful to have a guest speaker join us again this week. I'm telling you, Ryan, it makes me so happy that we're having guest speakers. So far, 3 for 3 this week. That's a great number right there to have. Really giving a nice dynamic, having 3 speakers on and having a nice, open conversation for the podcast. So it's going really good, guys. But I'd like to introduce you to Juan Antonio. Juan Antonio, please say hello to everyone.
Hey guys! I'm really honored and enthusiastic about being here and having an opportunity to share some ideas and just really a new experience for me. I hope it all goes well and don't throw off the mojo of the podcast, the rad mojo.
The rad mojo, I feel that. Yeah. We bounce in and we bounce out. Somehow it still ends up being something. All right.
The good news is that rad mojo doesn't often get thrown off. It just multiplies.
Right on.
So our topic today was we were going to talk a little bit about the future, right? We're in a moment here where things are a little uncertain. We've been living a couple of weeks that have been strange, that have been out of the normal way that we like to think about our human lives, and sometimes it's even hard now to think about what's life going to be like when we walk out of our apartments or out of our houses or into the real world again. And so today we're here to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting topic because I don't know about you guys, but spending so much time indoors or at least on a balcony or within your own vicinity, I'm starting to get the feeling that I forget what the real world is like out there. Like, how did things go again? Were there things called buses that take you places? And there's, we got feet that we can all of a sudden walk long distances with. It's making me realize, oh, wait a second, there's the great outdoors that we haven't seen in a long time. So it's definitely an interesting topic talking about the future. Yeah, absolutely. I myself, I think there was an old quote, if I remember right, which is when you look at the future, you must plan for the best and prepare for the worst. Well, in many ways, I think adapting in today's world is what it's really come down to, and planning for the best and preparing of what could happen, essentially. The uncertainties that we live in, I think, in many ways, right?
Very interesting way to put it. I think that leaving the dynamic of leaving the house as a metaphor of going out of your maybe comfort zone is a cool dynamic to analyze. I've started to just now think about in the future, maybe having had a chance to retrain so many behaviors and so many ways of thinking, and just kind of like having your inner things in order, but then having to leave your comfort zone when you leave your house, and just maybe how to think about yourself when you're out of your house and the process of going out, because I just went out last Tuesday morning grocery shopping, and I hadn't left the house for over 20 days, I think. I had not left the house at all, and so going out grocery shopping and interacting, outside the house was interesting. I think that it was very kind of like no chit chat, no joking around really, and conversation, which is something that I've always liked about this Latin culture that I'm a part of. And then coming back home specifically, the whole process of taking your clothes off, showering, and just kind of like a metaphor for when you come back into your comfort zone and back into your house, you have to kind of like leave a lot of the stuff that you accumulated when you went out and interacted with the world, and you have to kind of like decide what you're going um, to bring into your safe zone, and what you're gonna keep and what you're gonna not really want to bring in, because it might kind of not jive with your with what you're trying to do in your home, in your comfort zone. So I don't know. That just kind of came to me while David was mentioning the idea of the future, and going out and coming back. And it seems like going out and coming is not really gonna just be as simple as it used to be. You know, like not it's not gonna be an unconscious uh, process. It's gonna become maybe for some people, at least maybe for me, more of a conscious act.
Yeah, no, definitely. Sorry, we lost Ryan right there, but I'm guessing he'll try and join us again shortly. But you're right about that.
Cool.
You know, that kind of that future of uncertainty of, you know, what do I let in, what do I let out, what's my new relationship status with some things. One thing I've realized is the new relationship status of digital technology. You know, and I don't know, maybe you agree with this, but I've always heard the phrase "we are growing up in a digital age." You know, and obviously that term growing is a present continuous, as in it's going to be a long lasting, you know, effect. But nobody's ever said to me we are in the digital age, right? As in like we are living and daily we find ourselves in a digital age. But I more often than not hear we're growing up in the digital age rather than saying we are in the digital age. And for me right there, the digital age, you know, that's some new relationship that I'm having. I'm finding that I'm having to interact with technology much more than I ever did in the past. And I think we got Ryan back on right now. So I guess the question I'll pose to you, and I'll pose to Ryan once he's back, is what's your new relationship with technology that you're finding?
Ryan, do you want to get on that, or?
Okay. Sure. I don't know. I don't know if the relationship is new, but it's definitely intensified.
Yeah.
Because I'm just stuck to it now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no, I suppose in another way too. I'm also getting into other sorts of well, you know, for instance, I had Facebook now as long as I've been in Colombia, about 9 years. I was very slow and reluctant to start Facebook, but actually about 2 years ago, shortly after Trump was elected president, I just got really tired of Facebook and I kind of disconnected completely. And it was really interesting because I almost immediately, just when this started to happen, I almost immediately, boom, got back in and got back kind of reconnecting with people in that way. And it was strange because I thought like, wow, it's not like I went through a long time of like being antisocial or anything, but it was almost just immediately I wanted to be connected with people and I wanted to see what was going on in other parts of the world. And so, so yeah, I guess just more intense of a relationship with technology.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys feel like your bodies just kind of have a limit to how much screen time you can actually handle. I don't know if our bodies, because we're from a generation that didn't grow, or at least I don't know, Ryan maybe, or I didn't grow up with so much screen time. And although I watched a lot of TV and played a lot of video games, but it just seems like my eyes get tired after a while. Maybe it's just because I'm older right now, but it's just like I get to a point where I don't want to look at a screen anymore. Like right now, I'm talking and I'm looking at the wall. I'm not really looking at the screen just because I even have this kind of a warmer tone on my computer. and on my phone because it seems like it's easier for my eyes to adjust. And I don't know if it's because we're from another generation and our bodies are just not. I don't know if the human body is going to have to evolve to be able to handle so much more screen time. I'm curious about that. I know that our bodies don't really catch up in evolution as fast as technology evolves. And definitely now that it's more intense in terms of amount of hours during the day that we're watching a screen, it seems like I don't know, we're gonna have to do something.
No, it's a good point that you're bringing up about that screen time and that interaction that we have with screens. I think it was like 2 years ago, I read a study that was done in a miniature like sample size in New York City. More babies knew the words iPhone before mother. I was just like, oh my goodness. Yeah, like what kind of world? These are the future kids are growing up in a world where they say iPhone before mama. And I'm just like, what? Really? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the day and age that we're growing up in, with technology just like, immersing, if you will, itself into our lives. And I'm trying to remember the term. I can't remember it right now, but there's a terminology about technology and whether it's productive or negative in our lives, destructive. I'm trying to remember the terminology. There's a term that describes whether a technology is on the good or the bad. I don't know. Ryan, do you remember this word? Yeah.
I don't know.
Drawing a blank at it right now, but hopefully I'll get a brain fart, if you will, later on. For the most part, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not used to, sometimes I like to get that feedback element or having another voice around rather than my own. But obviously a screen and having you guys come out of the speakers right here, it's like it's a new dynamic. In fact, later tonight, and it's going to be a little bit weird, but I have like a online Zoom birthday party, and it's like, well, all right, this is a first. All right, it's a birthday party where I'm here, and then 10 more of you guys are spread out all over the place. But it'll be a first for me having this online, get together, if you will. Yeah, but I don't know.
Is it your birthday or is it?
No, it's a friend's birthday, and they invited everyone out on this Zoom birthday party, and some people will be eating their meals and like saying, "Ooh, would you like some?" and trying to feed the camera, maybe. I don't know. I know how it goes, but yeah. I told him to save me a piece of the birthday cake, but at the end of the day, it's like, how am I going to get the birthday cake, really, right? Yeah, you're going to like send me an emoji. Here's the emoji of the birthday cake. Oh, thank you very much. That was delicious, let me just say.
It seems like what my daughters do with their stuffed animals when they're trying to feed them part of their food as they sit at the dinner table with them. It's funny to
and then they eat it.
But one thing I've also thought about is, I read all the time about big data, right? Big data and how people are just compressing big data. And, the fact that, the 2016 presidential election was based off of gathering of Facebook data and stigmatizing people to Fox News or CNN based off of their, profile, if you were, from their data. It makes me kind of also think a little bit about these interactions that we do online, meeting someone in a cafe and having a coffee with them, right? There's no way of knowing what was discussed unless you talk to the two people having the coffee, right? But having this Zoom interaction that goes through servers and everything, I kind of think that, governments, if they wanted to, could kind of take advantage of that, right? There's a difference between me and a friend meeting on Zoom, and there's a difference between me and that friend also going to have a coffee somewhere, right? So that's one thing I kind of wanted to discuss today, was that government interaction with society, if you will, like whether they're going to do something about this. I don't know. Ryan, you read that article that I sent you, the Harari article, I think, right?
I did, yeah, and that's I think that's the big question right now that we're all in, right? Because now we're fully aware. Okay, we're putting everything online, right? everything that we do right now in our professional life as teachers anyway is online. Like you said, this conversation is going through who knows how many hands, and who knows what pieces of data are being stored, where they're being stored, who's going to be able to listen to this conversation in the future. And this is really a crucial moment, right? I mean, this is where this could become either completely normal or I guess a moment of maybe resistance against this type of thing. But I don't know what that resistance would look like. Interestingly enough, I also read another article this morning on NPR that said that that people, I mean, we've just fully jumped into Zoom without knowing anything about what Zoom is. And they said that Zoom's, I'm sorry, I don't know a lot about technology, but Zoom's encryption technology and things like that is not nearly what it should be. And that Zoom bombing is actually becoming a trend right now. People are jumping into or hacking into Zoom conversations or conferences or what have you, and displaying pornographic images or racial slurs. Somebody was defending their PhD dissertation, and somebody came in and started drawing inappropriate things on the screen. So, I mean, somebody right now could be easily just hacking into this podcast, and whatever they decide to do with that in the future, I hope they're gracious. Please don't punish us for having this conversation.
Oh, definitely.
And so, I think, I don't know, this is a moment, an interesting moment for freedom, right? I think the whole situation is really interesting. And one thing that I just wanted to say, and then I'll give the word to somebody else. I'm very, very impressed in good and bad ways, about how quickly we've adapted to this situation. And David said it at the beginning. You said, that you're kind of forgetting what normal life was like before coronavirus and before social isolation. And I mean, this has become normal very fast, very, very fast. And if you had said to somebody in December of 2019 that we were going to spend the entire month of March or April or both inside of our houses, I mean, who would have believed that?
My eyes would have lit up. My hair would have been on fire. I would have been like, what?
I just would have said you're stupid. Like, there's no way. And I mean, and now I think I'll just finish here. Colombia, I mean, I'm not Colombian, but I've lived here for a long time. And so what I understand about Colombia is that, they have a different relationship with authority, right? Let's say different from my culture in the United States. And to a certain respect, here they're a little more resistant to authority in a lot of ways. Rules are very flexible. Rules are very, but I mean, I went out this morning to go grocery shopping, and there's nobody out there. The streets are empty, and Colombians also have taken this very seriously and become very obedient, which is a good thing, because the situation is serious, but also scary in that means that society is that moldable and that controllable. And so if the intentions to control us are not good intentions, we could easily fall victim to, something a little nastier and a little more harmful for us.
No, definitely. In fact, one thing that I found interesting is, I mean, naturally, the world economy is not doing very well. But in the past, when you look at every single world economy crisis, if you will, there's always a technology that emerges that all of a sudden was used as a way of like formalizing society during that time. For example, 2008 economy crisis. Guess what was like active and doing extremely well in 2009? Which application online? Remember, housing. Airbnb. It was
Uh-huh.
2008 during the economy crisis. And then look, people were like, oh no, I have no home. I have nowhere to stay. And people are posting on this site, Airbnb. And all of a sudden, 2009, 2010, we realized, wow, Airbnb is like a huge corporation now, right? Or you look at the 1999 stock market. Well, it was called the internet bubble, that crash. There were like hundreds and hundreds of sites exactly like Amazon, all right? But when the internet crash happened, all of a sudden we have, major players in the internet like Google and Amazon that just emerge out of it because they wiped out the previous companies that were on the stock market. They were just like, whoops, you weren't able to survive the crash. Boom. So I'm wondering, in many ways, I suspect Zoom might be one of these applicants, if you will, for after what happens. But it's interesting to think what is going to emerge out of this. And I have a funny suspicion, some kind of form of social interaction where you're face to face with the person is going to submerge out of this, in my opinion. But I don't know. I'll let you guys issue your opinion. Do you think there's going to be a technology that emerges out of this that will play a large role in technology and that will play a role in society or even interaction with humans?
That's it's hard to imagine for me, like more technology. I remember the last time I was amazed by technology was from a TED talk from a guy who was talking about how human biology is, as I was saying before before we started, how human biology is not evolving as fast as our capacity to develop technology. And so, like our ears, for example, don't have the capacity to listen to so many different frequencies that the ear is just not designed for it, and our eyes aren't able to see so many different color spectrums, and that technology comes in and tries to develop ways of making your eyes and your ears kind of like plug into peripheral devices where there's like chips that are now being implanted into parts of the human body that allow the brain to get information from the eyes that before it wasn't able to. And so it blew my mind that talk. I think the guy was even like going into how they were putting a chip into the human tongue, and somehow the tongue was sending signals to the brain that was allowing the information that the chip was receiving. The input was like differences in the fluctuations in the stock market, and somehow then the brain was receiving this information, and it was being able to decipher a pattern in the fluctuations of the stock market. And all of this was just experimental and new, but it just blew my mind how technology is going to merge with human biology. So it's hard for me to imagine anything crazier than that. I think that that in terms of software, it seems like there's already like such a big development of software. I'm kind of interested in the hardware that's going to be developed, because I think it's going to allow the human body to really be able to interact with what's already out there in terms of software a lot better. And I think that this situation that we're living in has pushed us to use technology that was already available, but we, as a species, we really weren't tapping into the possibilities as we are now being forced to. So just using internet to not have to go into work, but working from home, and that changes the whole dynamic of the workspace and what work. We're kind of redefining what work means to each one of us, because we're kind of like doing work in our pajamas if that's what we feel like. And kind of like putting work down for a second and going to our kitchen and grabbing something from our kitchen and then coming back. And so that whole like work dynamic is changing right now because of but because we're being pushed to adapt and to make the change and to upgrade, because I think as a species we were just kind of being lazy about, okay, you know, we invented the technology but we really weren't using it to its full extent. Just like, you know, they say that the brain has this amazing processing capacity, but we really don't tap into that capacity. And maybe the example that I was giving of plugging in a chip, putting in a chip, is maybe a way of a necessary step in the future of human evolution, because otherwise it seems like it just doesn't have we don't have the speed of like using traditional education, traditional ways of trying to grow seem like they're not up to speed with what's you know, what's being demanded. And so this kind of situation just kind of like puts everything in a microwave, I think, and pushes that change.
No.
With lots of tinfoil.
Yeah.
Couple of forks. And
Something you brought up is a good point, honestly, and that's you know, this like the microchip idea. You know, Amazon like 2 years ago. I mean, obviously, you know, most recently you went out to the supermarket, right? And you probably had maybe not a long interaction, but you said hello at least to the cashier, I'm guessing. Amazon has a type of store that exists where you don't even have cashiers and you don't have employees in the supermarket. You just have technology that is spatial technology, just by knowing the area that you're walking in, knowing that something has been taken from this one area. You just walk in and walk out and it charges you. And it's a store that they have in Seattle. And it fascinates me how there's like no humans that work in this store. It's a grocery store, yeah. But it's a grocery store with no humans. It's all technology based. You know, you walk in and you get registered as, oops, I just have my Amazon account just got pulled up. And then you start going around and you shop. But as you pull something from one of the areas, it'll register and say, sure enough, like, oh, okay, you've taken something from here. We'll charge you for something taken from this shelf right here. So it's interesting how, you know, you mentioned that aspect of technology playing a role where it's like, you know, it's limiting human interaction. If it's okay with you guys, I want to show you a very small, short clip from, I think I've shared this video once with you, Ryan, but Sherry Turkle, she is a fantastic, and I'll leave a link just below for everyone to watch. But she has this video that's connected but alone. And I'm going to show my favorite bit of the clip, which is her talking about the Goldilocks effect. And it's something that I think right now even we're kind of experiencing. But let me just share the screen very quickly and I'll show a small clip and we can discuss it.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I like the phrase because it's a phrase that it's very similar to a phrase that I've written many times in my little notebook when I'm trying to think of an idea for a poem or something. And I think that the words together and alone, and being together alone or being alone together is just nature of the condition that we live in now. I mean,
good point.
Those two words, you know, used to be mutually exclusive, right? You couldn't be alone and be together, but I think now we're both at the same time all the time. And it's weird.
Even countries are somehow finding this as well, you know, on a global scale. They're realizing, well, we're alone, but we're together in a fight, you know, at the moment. So it's kind of like you're alone, but you're together. It's like, you know, can you choose between the two, or do they both must be synonymous with one another at the same time, right? But he has this interesting phrase called the Goldilocks effect, which I think maybe you might like in terms of using it for your poem in the future, Ryan. But let me just play a very short clip from it.
Actually, I'd rather just do things on my BlackBerry. Across the generations, I see that people can't get enough of each other if and only if they can have each other at a distance in amounts they can control. I call it the Goldilocks effect. Not too close, not too far, just right. But what might feel just right for that middle-aged executive can be a problem for an adolescent who needs to develop face-to-face relationships. An 18-year-old boy who uses texting for almost everything.
Sorry, guys. Looks like we got a little pause right there. Well, okay. At least I got the main part of the Goldilocks effect that I wanted to share with you guys. But I don't know. What's your take on that Goldilocks effect? She goes on to give the example of an 18-year-old boy versus, a 45-year-old man, and how they have different patterns of how to text or when social interaction, if you will. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna, if I can, maybe talk just quickly about my personal experience. I've always been sort of slow to adapt technology. So, and for instance, I had a cell phone, I don't know, back in 2003, I guess. It's actually pretty late. I was already in the university then, and most of my friends had cell phones when they were in high school. But when we talk about cell phones, we're talking about, the Nokias that we used to actually make phone calls on cell phones.
Those Nokias, they could survive a 2-floor drop, honestly. You do that with an iPhone, it's like, no way, but those were bricks that would survive and long last. Oh my goodness. I'm surprised that they lasted at they were indestructible, honestly, but these touch screens,
Yeah. And yeah, people used to actually use them to make telephone calls. It was really weird. But then, texting sort of around that time was kind of just coming into its own, I think, I guess. Or again, I was slow, so I don't know. But I never paid like a plan that included texting because I just wasn't interested in it. And so when people would text me, it was terrible because first of all, it would cost me like 20 cents just to open the text and then to respond. I think they probably charged me like another 20 or maybe 30 cents or something. And so in fact, at one time I met a girl and we were talking, and then she gave me her phone number, and so later that evening she texted me, and I said, look, I actually don't text. Like maybe we could just have a phone conversation. And well, let's just say that one never went anywhere. But so I was very resistant to that type of communication for a long time. But now I can tell you that I'm fully invested in it, because when somebody calls you on the telephone, they are also committing you to give them your attention. And that's a lot of commitment now, you know what I mean? And I don't always have that. So I'm fully invested in the system of I'll get back to you when I have time. And the nice thing about, chatting apps, WhatsApp or whatever it might be, is that it does give you that, the Goldilocks, right? I can control when I'm ready to talk to you.
Yeah.
And when I'm not, I can be alone, right? I can have my time, which is it's a cool thing. But, what have we lost in that exchange, I guess, for communication's sake, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sometimes someone will text me, and sometimes I'll take 45 minutes or an hour to respond because I forgot to respond. But think about that on a real life face-to-face interaction where somebody asks you a question and I go blank for 45 minutes and then I say, yeah, no, I totally agree. And they're like, what are you talking about? There's that.
David, I'll tell you how I feel about that tomorrow. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, please do. Oh, very cool. Very cool.
I don't know. Maybe if I could just jump back in, though, we were talking a little bit about the idea of integrating technology into the human body, right?
Yeah.
I've been thinking for quite some time, and then now actually I have this example from this week. I have been thinking for quite some time that like actually AirPods are my enemy number one. I hate AirPods. Like, if
Cheers
I
to
could
that.
undo, yeah, one technological, and here's the thing. I'm a complete hypocrite, right? Because I have a really nice set of Bluetooth headphones, right? But difference is that, for instance, if I'm wearing these, everybody knows that I'm wearing them, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than like walking up to a person and like talking to them and then having no idea that in fact that person is completely disconnected from the world around them, right? I mean, absolutely no, but but you wouldn't know that. Now, where is this starting to take me? This week I've noticed, for instance, in this situation where we have to work in our homes and I share my home, you know, with my wife, what that means is that space has become a premium because I'm having these chat conversations and she might be saying something in the background and I maybe don't want what she's saying to, I don't want anybody to hear it. So I'm starting to, for instance, rely a lot more on Bluetooth.
Yeah.
And a lot more on technologies that in the past I just sort of used passively or just because maybe it was slightly more convenient. I like to listen to my Bluetooth headphones while I wash the dishes, right? Because
Yeah.
I can be a little bit more free to wash the dishes. Now I'm starting to, you know, see the need for them. And one thing that I've always thought is that people today are being sort of prepared for integration, I think. And I think if you asked a lot of young people today if they would be open to integrating technology into their bodies, I think that I think that more young people today would accept it than, let's say, people of our age or, you know, other generation. I don't know. I'm still fearful of those types of things, I'll be honest. And again, that goes back to me always being a slow adapter of technology. But I mean, that being said, this week I've also seen like where it would be incredibly beneficial if I could have a Bluetooth device in my body. You know, these headphones just disconnected from my computer for some reason. I don't know why, so I had to go get the cord one.
So I don't know, were you done, Ryan?
Yeah, I
Because
think so.
I was really interested in, I think that that the term Goldilocks condition, I think is really interesting. I heard it at the beginning. Big History Project course that's available on the internet, David. And I think if you haven't seen it, I think it would really be up your alley because I know you're interested in history and it has that term repeated a lot, but more from the evolutionary chemical balance that had to exist in the planet in order for life to emerge, and also even before the planet appeared, for the Big Bang to occur, there had to be Goldilocks conditions in terms of the physical conditions that were necessary for the Big Bang. And so that idea of the Goldilocks conditions being just the right balance for something to appear, to there's another word for appear that I'm trying to grasp. Emerge, exactly. Thanks, man. And it's really interesting, now bringing it in to what Ryan was saying about how our use of technology, it kind of it's a process, and how we sometimes text back at a certain moments quicker than we might at some other moments. And I think it's interesting how I watch myself sometimes and kind of I'm interested in my reaction to the different chats that I'm involved in, and how sometimes I'm more active and sometimes I'm more laid back and just let everybody else kind of text in. And I think the Goldilocks conditions are kind of like what, or a way of looking at that is just the process of reality. You know, like how we experience reality is it has to be conditions have to be just right for things to actually happen. And then we become conscious about those things also because of specific conditions that make us conscious of things. And it's all just, you know, like a very amazing coincidence that we end up being conscious of certain things and not others. And I also, I might be able to connect this other thought that I had as Ryan was talking, and it's just that as a species, we were asking questions in this podcast in the beginning about how the future is going to be, and how as a species we're going to be in the future. And I think that as people that are more intellectually inclined, like to kind of extrapolate and try to the future and think how it's going to be. We always need to factor in the fact that there are so many humans that are that have different realities. That really this whole kind of like analysis or of their reality that we're living right now and their consciousness are just totally different, because these things just don't factor in. You know, they're just living their day to day, and they're dealing with basic kind of necessities, and so I think that how it's going to be for humanity has to factor in all of these other people who just don't really use technology, maybe, or their necessities are just totally different. And I guess if a machine was able to add up all of the different human beings and their individual necessities, and then factor in all of those, add them all up, and then at the end make an average, then that result would be how the future is going to be. I do think that we're never going to advance as quickly as we think we would, just because, you know, some humans are really amazingly intellectual, and just kind of have these ideas that seem to push us all forward. But there's a lot of people that are kind of, I don't want to say holding us back, because I don't think that's the
Restrained, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like I think there's I see it in my mind as this kind of weird bubble that's being pushed forward by certain individuals, and then there's parts of the bubble that are just kind of lagging behind, and the bubble move forward in a perfectly spherical way, because it gets kind of like, I don't know. It's it's an image that I'm trying. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ryan? It's
Yeah,
kind of.
You make a good point about these things that are going to emerge that some people just have to adapt to. In fact, I'm reading Harari's second book, Homo Deus, and I'm at a really interesting point in the book where he's talking about how mankind at the moment, yeah, there's been some amazing developments and amazing births that we've been like, oh, wow, there's this app, or whoa, wow, there's this technology. Oh, wow, there's a touchscreen phone, right? And one thing that he mentions is that all these things, at the root of them, in terms of the human condition, they can be traced to two things that humanity has always been chasing, and we will continue to chase at the moment, which is one, the pursuit of happiness, and two, immortality. Now, I just last night read about his chapter on immortality, and it was interesting. I got to ask, have you guys ever heard of something called Calico? It's like a subdivision of Google. No?
No.
Calico
idea.
is a subdivision of Google that's main focus is to find the answer of immortality. And I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, Google is going to make robots. They're going to make like digital conscious me of the future. And it's going to be like, well, we've uploaded David's data into this robot and now he is wandering the world. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't want to be a robot. But, you know, it's this aspect that mankind is chasing pursuit of happiness and immortality as far as the technology at the root of all things that we develop. Those are the two things that we kind of see at the root. If it's a science development of health, you know, it's related to immortality. If it's a technology development, it's related to the pursuit of happiness. And I don't know if we can really, you know, break down things to those basic levels, but maybe you guys kind of disagree that the birth of things have, you know, different pathways.
Well, I still think that, like what Juan Antonio was saying, you know, if I understand you correctly, like the emergence into a new level can't happen if, you know, sort of like humanity can't go on to the next planet if all of humanity doesn't also go, right? We can't just like leave part of us here on the earth.
Yeah.
Like we've in some way like to find a new Goldilocks condition, there needs to be a better balance in the whole of humanity, not just those who are the most privileged or the most technologically advanced, let's say. Something a little bit more along those lines, something a little more democratic.
Yeah, I think that's that you're getting the gist of what I was trying to say, and it's kind of like another way of explaining that is the whole idea, the spiritual idea of compassion. You know, like how some Buddhists that are able to reach enlightenment, they don't kind of like just kind of go, oh, cool, you know, like I reached enlightenment, good for me. I'll just stay here enlightened and enjoy. It's I think the Mahayana tradition. They have this whole idea that they have to help others, you know, reach enlightenment, and the same idea is in Christianity, and it's the idea of like we're all connected, we're all on the same boat. So if the boat's gonna arrive at a certain place, it's gonna arrive with everybody on it. Otherwise, it's not gonna really be getting to that place that we think it's getting to. Right. So thanks for bringing in the two ideas, Ryan. I think you got it.
And oh man, I was gonna build off of that, but now I forgot. Forgot where the boat was gonna go.
Don't worry, we'll all be on it when it gets to.
As long as you float the boat, I think you're all good. Just float the boat, right? That's it. That's all it takes.
Exactly. No, actually, I mean that was one of the I took notes on the Harari art, and I think that was one of the big. No, now I know where I wanted to go, which was like this moment that we're living in for that reason. Is also a moment of a great transition, because to the world in the last couple of weeks was, you know, I expected to see.
Sorry, Ryan. I
the
think
guy
we're
who
cutting
sells
off with you right there
avocados
just a little
online.
bit.
I think that like people who work in those types of jobs.
Oh, well, that's Ryan right there. Okay.
Yeah, I was hearing some audio interference. I thought it was me, but if you were hearing it too, maybe
Yeah,
it
no, I'm
was.
hearing it too. I think that was. Oh, here we go. All right. So Ryan, all good?
Okay. Well, let me see if I can wrap that idea up quickly. I didn't expect that the avocado guy on the corner
Uh-huh.
was going to stay home. You know what I mean? Like, I expected that in some way, that type of, I don't want to speak in that way. But the type of people who work in the day to day, the type of people who, you know, don't work in an office, I didn't necessarily expect them to be following the same guidelines. And okay, there's a certain legal enforcement of it. Let's say, I don't know, maybe the guy was out there the first day, and then maybe the police came by and told him, "Hey, man, you got to go home," right? I don't know. But the fact is that he's not there. He's not out there anymore, right? And
Uh-huh.
so that means that this experience is, you know, democratic. It's universal. Everybody is feeling it, right? And I
Hmm.
think that that's important. I think that means that, you know, maybe we have pushed the ship off of the shore,
We
and
have definitely good
and
metaphor.
so
Yes, definitely.
so
We're
now we
definitely
got to
not
see where
where
it's going to go.
exactly. We're definitely not going back to, you know, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I
I
think
think
that's also exciting, you know. It's also like we know we're not going to go back to where we were, so we might as well kind of like take advantage of the possibility and kind of like try to finally go try to get to a better place, because a lot of the complaining that was going on in society was just, you know, oh, we're messing up the world, we're messing up the planet, we're doing this and that, so let's not go back to messing it up. I think it would be very, I don't know, I don't even know if it's like, sometimes like I would, before this I would ask myself, is it really possible uh, to kind of be at a place of change and really mess it up again? I mean, I guess so, but not in a conscious way anyway. I mean, if you're looking at the wall, can you really go and slam against it again? I think that's the definition of just craziness, you know, like knowing that there's a hole there, or a rock there, and just kind of like tripping over it again. Um, it would seem just really weird, you know, to do that. It would seem crazy, literally, to go back to doing things the way we were.
Well, it seems like we're at a moment where, at the very least, everybody sees the rock, right?
Hmm.
And nobody
Yeah.
can really hide anymore or say, no, the rock isn't there. No, I think everybody has definitely stubbed their toe on it.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter if you're, again, you could be the avocado salesman on the corner, you could be the guy in the corporate office. We all felt the same rock, right? And so
Hmm. I
I
would
don't
I
know.
would be I would be interested, Ryan, since you brought in the avocado guy, and before you had also mentioned the way that we here in Colombia have just kind of really taken the norm of staying indoors a lot more to heart, or we're doing it a lot more um, as a group. We've kind of respected the idea that going out is not good for us.
Mhm.
So I would really like to kind of go deeper into that analysis of our reaction as a culture, as a Latin culture. I don't know exactly how much more in the States people are doing it differently. I don't know even um, if in certain parts of Colombia, or certain parts of Pereira, maybe like certain areas of Pereira, people are not really staying in their homes. I don't think. Uh, I've seen pictures of downtown, and definitely people are now, just saying that it's empty. But I don't know, certain parts of Pereira neighborhoods it's like that. I think it would be really interesting to talk more about whether culturally as Colombians we are um, uh, finally being obedient. And I say finally because you also mentioned that we haven't been that good at respecting the law, or we interpret the law in a very
Loosely.
flexible way,
Yeah.
very loosely. Yeah, and I'd be interested in going in deeper if you guys have thoughts about that.
Hmm.
Well, I think that's where you get back into the Harari article, because then okay, like my question is the following. Is the avocado guy not on the corner because he because he can't be, because he's been forced off of it by authority, by the police? Or is he off of it because he can recognize the danger that exists, uh, both to himself but then also to the community around, if he's out on the corner? And I think that also makes a really big difference. Because
There's a third alternative that I'd like to
thank
propose, and
thank God.
maybe well, I don't know if it's better anyways, but but I think that a third reason is that maybe he's also not out there because economically it doesn't make sense to stand out and to sell things if people are not going to be around to buy your avocados.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just such a it's an economic. I mean, the economy is tied to the general behavior of the group, because you don't sell something that people don't want. So if as a group, the group makes a decision to behave a certain way, then that ends up affecting you. So I guess that third alternative throws back to the question of why are people as a group, why is Colombian society reacting in this very apparently disciplined way? And it's interesting to me. I don't know. Maybe it's I think the article of Harari was mentioning that maybe people, when they know that their government is um, making decisions that are good for them and they understand it, and somehow maybe there's something there. I think that as a society, we've usually not been very respectful of the law. And this goes back all the way to the history of Colombia when we were a colony of Spain, and there would be laws that the king would send over here, and then like no more slaves or no more obligating indigenous population to work on mines without pay, and the people here would say, the king, he doesn't really know how things need to be here in order for those mines to produce gold. We need to enslave these indigenous people. So we're just going to go ahead and ignore the law of the king. Poor king. He doesn't really know, like what things are supposed to be. We really honor you, king, but we're not going to respect or we're not going to actually do what you said we had to do. So it created like this dichotomy of relationship to the law and to the norm that has carried on. And this is not my theory. It's from the historian who wrote the book that I was reading about the history of Colombia, and I thought that was really interesting. And so maybe tying it to the Harari article, I just think that maybe when governments put out laws that don't make sense to the population, then it's harder for the population to actually abide by them. And maybe as teachers, you guys know that sometimes we can we can ask ridiculous stuff of our students, and if we do, there's going to be some that are going to do the things because they're very disciplined, and but then it's going to be a really strong fight against the majority to have them but do the things that we want them to do. But if we somehow present things in ways that make sense to them, and it's going to be easier for us to have those norms respected by the majority of the students. And so I think that's kind of maybe an explanation of why, I don't know, I guess Colombians in general see the sense of staying home. So I guess they're doing it because it makes sense to us. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Ryan?
It's interesting because in the article, his main focal point in terms of governments imposing these laws and people abiding by them, he kind of breaks it all down to this element of trust, right? And he says, like, well, if the people trust the governments, they will do the right thing and stay at home. And in some countries, that's not the case. People aren't obeying, if you will, the laws. And on the flip side of it, if the government trusts the people, they know that they don't need to make it a law and don't need to give fines out. So this element of trust is the lens throughout the article that he looks at. He looks at trust as well on a global scale and says, like, well, what if there is research that's going on in Germany that they're not sharing with the US? Or what if South Korea informs, like, let's say, England of the laws that they used in their countries, that global trust as well of sharing, and that's something right there that he says is not really happening in the world at the moment in terms of an economic. I mean, the way he puts it, is it that we're looking at global solidarity, or are we looking at national isolation? Those are the two kind of contradicting things. And he's saying some people would like to lean one way and other countries want to lean another, right? And in many ways, we can all be on the same page if we have this element of trust amongst our global, population, our global society. If we trust hearing what we've been told about going outside and stuff is good for us, we will abide by that. But if we don't trust it and we say, like, oh, this is all good, I can do as I please, that's kind of the root of it all, is trust, I find. And
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I really like that part of the article too, and I think it's key. It's definitely about trust right now, like learning how to trust the leaders that we have. And I like this part of the article where he says, that the United States just kind of gave up on their leadership of the world, in terms of, like, before everybody would look to the United States in terms of that they were the leaders of what is it? How is it that he refers to that part of the leadership?
Playing a kind of like the train conductor, if you will, right? Like, leading
like
people as a team player, like organizing everyone to play it together as a team, if you will. Yeah.
And how since the Trump administration, it's all been about, like, oh, make America great again. Oh, like whatever.
It's not about being a team player, if not about playing on your own. And
so now there's like a void there. I think a void of leadership, of world leadership, that Harari is tapping into, and realizing that somebody. I mean, there's plenty of intellectuals like he is, and there's plenty of people out there, but in terms of I guess power, there's like a void in terms of who's really gonna, like, lead the way, and what world leader is can we really support right now. And I don't know, maybe it's not gonna be just one, maybe it's gonna be something new, maybe it's gonna be, I don't know. Any thoughts, Ryan? Because it seems like we need somebody to back, but there's nobody out there.
I think what we need are technologies of trust.
Yeah.
I don't know what I don't know what those look like, because it seems like technology can so easily be used to do the
Manipulate,
opposite,
maybe.
to create mistrust, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's all that it's really done. But it's kind of clear that like we need to be able to sort out all the noise and find the signal. But
True.
that might be the biggest challenge. Yeah, because I definitely, yeah, I wrote it down in my notes. Trust is the bridge between all of these things. But if it's not solidly built, then we're all gonna fall in the river anyway. So that's the challenge, man. And that's where I don't know. I don't know if it comes from individuals starting to build it between each other in our. But you certainly, that's the difficult part, is that you don't feel it very much because you also feel this individual need to survive. When you go to the grocery store, or like you said at the beginning, Juan Antonio, like your normal Latin environment with this sort of friendliness and this gregariousness, you don't feel that right now. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like I'm in my mask and I'm in my my zone, my gloves, and I'm separate and I'm doing my thing. And so it's hard because the very nature of the nature of the threat that we're facing pushes us towards that type of behavior. It pushes us towards isolation. It pushes us away from other people. So I don't know. Maybe Zoom. Maybe it's Zoom, man. Maybe Zoom is the answer.
Zoom. Maybe Zoom is. Yeah. You make a good point, because I'm seeing around the world, honestly, on a global scale. And I'm just going to finish on this. Is I find that there is national distrust in cooperative work amongst countries. However, amongst individuals on a collective group, there exists a global trust in technologies, right? That's maybe the connection that we can have, is like, I'm here on Zoom talking to you guys rather than jumping on a bike or on a bus to go and do this face to face, right? So in many ways, I think there's a global trust on the technology front, but also a national distrust on the global front. It's a bit of a paradox, if you know what I'm saying, where there's, countries aren't wanting to work together, but individuals are willing to work together on, on a technology-based level. Yeah, if that's the foundation.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's going to look like, maybe this is kind of pushing us towards a moment of, I guess, overseas, over boundaries, connections through the internet, but just kind of like people starting to somehow use the internet more massively now because of this experience, to really be more selective about how and who they are connecting with, and kind of creating a clear intention. For example, this podcast is not something that I've ever done before, but now, because of the situation here, I find myself doing it, and it's an intellectual space that I've always kind of looked for, and I participated in physically. We've done the reading the book club at school, and there's been that space also of the art fellows that get together, which is cool. And I guess now it's like because I don't go out of the house really. I have my interactions are mainly with my family, which I realize are super important interactions for me. But then it's like, okay, so who am I now going to dedicate some online time to? Am I going to do it with my family, my extended, or my mom, my sisters who live overseas? Yes, and I take some time to do that. And then, okay, but I still need more human interaction. So who am I gonna connect with? What am I gonna talk about? Those people, and hopefully maybe then internet is going to in this coming time, in the future, it's gonna speed up the way that humans are more selective, more clear about the intentions of when they connect to other humans over the internet. But hopefully also it'll make us more conscious about, who we're exchanging conversations physically and with, and just to kind of like, like say stuff that means something, and be careful about the messages that you convey to others. And like, I guess there's always going to be a necessity to just kind of talk shit. Sorry about the term, but it seems like maybe hopefully we'll be more conscious that we're talking shit, and just kind of keep it down to the necessary level, and so that hopefully we are benefiting each other more in the future.
Can I maybe throw out a thought, and then I don't know, maybe it's about time to wrap this up.
Yeah.
As you guys were talking, and finally I was able to articulate my comment earlier about what was it, technologies of trust, and maybe that's what we're all working on right now, is the greater artificial intelligence that's going to be sort of global referee. I mean, maybe humans in themselves won't ever be able to trust other humans, and so maybe we need some sort of, maybe that's what we've been doing all along, is working on some objective intelligence that can kind of help us mitigate our differences, that can tell us, well, this is, these guys, their real intention behind this is not as benevolent as you might think that it might be, right? And so as we continue to build these technologies, they'll maybe be kind of the bridge between us, and help us trust each other a little more.
Oh, definitely.
And speaking of that, I wanted to recommend a poem, and the poem is called "Machines of Tender Loving Grace." And I don't know who the poet is, but
is it online? Can I put it below?
I'm sure it is. So
all right, fantastic. Machines of Tender Grace. All
Machines of Tender Loving Grace, I believe.
Fantastic. All right, folks. Well, as Looney Tunes says, that's all, folks. So I'm David.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Juan.
And we welcome and thank you very much for watching the podcast, guys. You have a wonderful, wonderful Friday evening. Take care.